6, if there was such a designation, entity, people called Macedonian Greeks as Professor Miller asserts, then Justin's reporting would be inaccurate and misleading. The alliance struck between Thebes and Athens, two mortal enemies, out of fear from Philip, rested on mutual benefit. Their common enemy should be repelled by their common forces. Their reasoning went as follows: if Philip met with success at the start, he would not stop short of bringing in all Greeks under his yoke. In this case, Philip put his own people and his own country under his yoke. Justin 9.3.6-7. Theodorus reports on Greeks wanting to throw off the Macedonian yoke. Would Professor Miller or his like-minded signatories offer any explanations for this apparent contradiction? Is Theodorus confused as to who had conquered whom, or if these two peoples were regarded as one? Diod. 17.3.3-5. 8. Professor Miller and the rest of the signatories of his petition, by implication, are guilty of inaccurate reporting, namely of denying the existence of Macedonian tongue. The following episodes confirm just the opposite. Plot. Alex. 51.4. Kurt. 6.9.35. Plot. Wing. 14.5. Av. 3.1228-9. Contrary to his 2,500 years of Greeks in Macedonia, we have Polybius reporting on Greek demands that Philip should evacuate from the whole of Greece. Pol. 18. 9. 18. 3. 4. As long as Corinth, Chalcis, and Demetrius remained under the Macedonian yoke, it was impossible for the Greeks to entertain any thoughts of liberty. Pol. 18. 11. 10. If ancient Macedonians were Greeks, then the Greeks would not send embassies to Rome to plead with the Roman Senate to liberate the Greeks from Philip. Just. 30.3.3-9. Pol. 16 and 18. Diod. 28.5 ff. Livy 31-33. 11. When the Romans liberated the Greeks, they, at the same time, defeated Philip and his Macedonians. If there was an entity called Macedonian Greeks, as Professor Miller states, then this animal surely got confused and lost in the shuffle. Pol. 18. 46.12. Upon hearing the news that Alexander died in Asia, the Greeks seized the opportunity to, once again, rebel against the Macedonian yoke and regain their liberty. At Lamia, the combined Hellenic forces met the Macedonians under Antipater's command. The Lamian War was known by its protagonists as Hellenic War. If the ancient Macedonians were Greeks, and thus Hellenes, whom were the Greeks fighting against at Lamia? Second, why will they call it a Hellenic War? Plot. What? 23 ff. Pal. 1.25.4-5. 13. Interesting encounter between Greeks and King Philip reported by Polybius. Greeks plead with Philip to protect them and not to make them easy prey for the invader. To protect every province of Greece, as you would if it were a part of your own dominion. It cannot get any clearer than this. Ancient Greeks, unlike Professor Miller and his friends, who teach college course history, did not see Macedonian Greeks in Philip's brethren, nor did they consider 2,500 years of Greeks in Macedonia. If you follow this policy, said the ancient Greeks, we will be your faithful allies and friends. Pol. 5.104. Philip V speaks about his ancestors Philip II and his son Alexander the Great conquering the Greeks and sending them under Macedonian yoke, Justin 30.3.7. 15. In Book 8. 2. Polybius criticizes Theopompus for abandoning his history of Greece to write about King Philip. Here, Philip is not considered as being a part of Greek history. Pol. 8. 2. 16. It is a fitting tribute to Professor Miller's contradictory assertions to complete this short rebuttal with a quote from Plutarch, a Greek born at Chaeronea. Upon hearing the news that Philip was killed, the Athenians, adorned with garlands and offering sacrifices to celebrate the death of a king, their Greek king, according to Professor Miller, went into a wild celebration, being beside themselves with joy, trampled on his body, and sang paeans of victory. One has no other option but to wonder how Professor Miller and his like-minded educators of higher learning would pass this episode to their students. This episode is analogous to the celebrations in some parts of the world after the 9/11 terrorist attacks in America. Will some students summon enough courage to ask the professors how it is possible for these Greeks to celebrate the death of their own beloved king. What? 22. At the end, we have no recourse but to rely heavily upon the text left to us from those who knew history the most, the ancient chroniclers. Here, the evidence presented will not allow us the liberty to experiment with the heartfelt emotions of the ancients. Those of us in education who teach have a moral obligation to present the facts to our students unaltered. We cannot, nor should we, get ourselves involved in teaching conclusions. We call upon you, Mr. President, to help, in whatever ways you deem appropriate, the government in Athens to understand that it cannot bully its neighbor into submission. It cannot appropriate the greatness of the ancient Macedonians, nor can it change other people's identity. It can no longer deny the existence of the ethnic Macedonians living in Greece. The government in Athens should come to realization that the feared Metaxas days are long gone and dead. Gone are the days when the Greek government-sponsored marauders would desecrate Macedonian churches and tombstones. Gone are the days when the Greek clergy would burn the Macedonian books in the monasteries and destroy any visible artifact connected to the ethnic Macedonians' past. Gone, also, are the days when ethnic Macedonians will take and endure the Greek tortures and abuse in silence and bowed-headed. Mr. President, what we really hope you do is not to act like the rest of the politicians, but stay true to your God-given wisdom and tell these Greeks to take a hike. Tell them to stop oppressing other people. Tell them to stop their discriminations against other ethnic groups living in Greece. Ask them why they have forbidden their ethnic Macedonians living in Greece from using their own mother's tongue. Ask them why they persecute people for identifying themselves as ethnic Macedonians. Ask them how come there are no ethnic minorities in Greece. And finally, Mr. President, ask them to stop their racist assimilatory policies against the ethnic Macedonians. As you can see, I did not solicit signatures from my colleagues, for I felt confident enough that what I have with me, the ancient chroniclers themselves, are sufficient proof to convince anybody.